CASAT Podcast Network.
Welcome to Season 5 of CASAT Conversations, a holistic look at mental health. Join us for a series of thought-provoking conversations that delve into the vast dimensions of mental well-being. From the intricate link between physical, emotional, and spiritual aspects of well-being to the latest scientific research, practices, and therapies, we navigate the multifaceted landscape of mental health together. We hope you enjoy today's conversation. Today, we welcome Dr. Sheila Patel. Dr. Patel is the Chief Medical Officer for Chopra Global. Welcome, Dr. Patel. We're so happy to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation.
As we get started, please share with us a little bit more about yourself and why you do the work that you do.
Yeah, I'm a physician, so I trained in the Western medical model and did family medicine as my residency and board certification. So I'm currently board certified in family medicine. And I started out the first 15 years of my career doing very conventional practice, just like you do when you go to see the doctor, and learned all the algorithms like a good little doctor does. And I went into family medicine because I really wanted to get to know my patients and really help them. And actually, honestly, I always was interested in prevention. Makes sense, right? Like, how do you prevent disease and keep people healthy? And I thought, primary care would be the best way to do that. But once I got out, I realized I wasn't really preventing many things. I mean, obviously, there are great things we do, say vaccinations, or, there are a lot of the things we did preventatively were more like early detection, like for cancer, right? But not like truly what I considered prevention. And now we see that. This was about 15 years ago. I started having grumblings of, what am I doing? I just treating people's diseases and they come back with more, or they have side effects from their meds. And I understood we learned the biopsychosocial model and I always practiced in very small towns, first in Southeast Alaska and then back to my home state of Wisconsin in a very rural wonderful community hospital. So I knew my patients very well. And I knew when they had stress in their lives, they would come in more. They would show up in the ER. They would, I knew that when their grandma was put into the nursing home, I delivered their babies, and so would see them afterwards when their mood, was not so great. So I always knew, as we do, that there's more to your health than just, what's right in front of you. And so around 15 years ago, I started feeling like I wanted to do something else. And then that conventional way of practicing, and integrative medicine was first starting to, the fellowship was created and people were talking about, the context of patient-centered care, et cetera. And then my parents come from India, so I knew about Ayurveda. It's a traditional healing system that comes from India, but I more heard about it like, this is good for your digestion, or in Ayurveda, you shouldn't do this, or you should do that, or home remedies. My mom would make them at home, or give us these little Ayurvedic pills. But then at this point in my career, I started looking at, how did they heal? How did they, do things thousands of years ago? And that took me back to Ayurveda. And I was just hooked. Once I started learning about this model of medicine that has existed for thousands of years, that considers holistically mind, body, spirit, and is very well laid out, that kind of changed the trajectory of my career. So I took a step back. I did some trainings in Ayurveda. Now I live in Southern California, and started working at the Chopra Center, which was here in Carlsbad, California, for many years. And just kept learning more and more about Ayurveda. I still see patients one day a week in a primary care office, just in outpatient medicine now. But most of the rest of the time, I'm teaching in our Ayurvedic lifestyle certifications, or I got certified in meditation. We now have an online yoga program and coaching program that I'm involved in. So that's maybe a long story, but there's a lot more to it, but that's basically what got me to where I am right now. And I love it. I love it. It reinvigorated my love of medicine to be able to do it more holistically.
I love that. I'm stuck on what you said about in the beginning, how you were taught to treat patients really as algorithms. And I've presented to med students and, been there during meetings. And I've had that same sort of thought, in listening to, if you, see this, do that. And I always just thought, how are we treating human beings like this? Like, there's so much more complexity and nuance here. And it was always so surprising to me. So.
Yeah, and that really gets to the root of the problem, I think. Like, I like saying the root of the problem because that's what Ayurveda tries to look at. What's the root of the problem, right? And so in medicine, we're treating diseases. We're treating symptoms. We aren't, again, I'm a physician and I love medicine. I really appreciate what we can do in medicine and what we can do very well, because I used to work in ERs in our communities and in patient care, is treat very acute disease. Like, we can pull people back from the brink very well because that's what medicines do. We push people in a direction, like literally shove them in a certain direction. Your body's going this way and you're going to die. We're going to shove you back this way. And it works. But that doesn't really work with chronic diseases. And prevention, right? This is like waiting till people are really, really sick and then we can save them. And procedures, technology. There's many, many great advances in medicine, but we're not really getting to the root of the problem. Like, this is true prevention. What's the root of the problem? And the thing I love about Ayurveda, like literally Ayurveda means the science of life. The word means this, Ayus is life and Veda is wisdom or knowledge or science, however you want to think of that word. But it describes life. So it describes everything about a human being and how nature functions through us. Nature meaning what happens when, in our mind and body, and how are we influenced by not just everything around us, but also internally. And this gets to thoughts, right? Our mental space significantly impacts our body. And this is Ayurveda, again, this is one of the foundational concepts. Mind, body, spirit, they're all integrated. They're different experiences of our being human. Body means what's the experience of this physical matter of a body that we call a body, and what influences that. Mind is the mental space. What influences the mental space? But not only that, how does the mental space and the physical space, how do they influence each other? And they're really one entity. And if you look at the deepest level, we have a thought, we have an instantaneous physiologic response. Everyone knows that, right? We think, I can have someone think about something stressful and they feel something in their body, right? Something's happening in the body. And then you think about someone you love or some really joyful sunset or an experience you had that you feel a different way, right? Like, we can have different adjectives for it, but there's no doubt we feel differently in the body. You may not see it, but we feel it. So something's happening, right? And now in mind-body medicine, there's like really should be very little doubt that they're connected, or that, again, that they're really one entity. One is just thoughts, the other is sensations in the body. But again, Ayurveda has very clear-cut foundations of not just mind-body, but then the spiritual aspect, these experiences that people have, that we all have. We just don't know the words for them, right? Or we don't talk about them because people will think we're woo-woo or crazy. But now, again, people are starting to describe purpose, meaning, a feeling of awe, deep connection with everything around us, all of these spiritual things. Maybe even having an experience of being out of your body. So anyway, this is a foundation of Ayurveda. And the other foundation is there are these concepts in the body, these patterns. I like to call them patterns or psychophysiological principles. The Sanskrit word for that is doshas. Sometimes if you start saying doshas and, this and that, people tune out. What does that mean? Or psychophysiological principles. But that's what they are. They're different patterns of personality and psychology and behavior, as well as patterns of biology. And so it's personalized. It's based on this person in front of you, as opposed to treating a disease. You're treating a person, their individual mind body type or dosha, and what's gotten out of balance in all of those patterns or doshas in their physiology. And then again, once they're having symptoms or even treating disease, but even before that, how do you keep a healthy person healthy, mentally and physically? And so how do you keep them healthy? How do you treat disease? You look at the root cause. And until you treat the root cause, you're just treating symptoms, which is, a lot of what we do in medicine. And in Ayurveda, the root cause of physical disease, they say a majority, or at least 2/3, depending on the books, that you read, the teachings, has a physical ailment, 2/3 of the time has an emotional root cause. So right there's an appreciation that, hey, your digestion's off. Let's look at your thoughts. Hey, you have inflammation in your body and you have high blood pressure and heart disease or whatever it is anymore. It can be any of the chronic diseases. What's going on in your mind? Let's examine that. What's your stress level? And stress really just comes from our thoughts, right? And overwhelm. But our thoughts about all the things we have to do, right? Not being present and worrying and all of those things create disease. So, these are just some of the things I love about Ayurveda. There's so much more, but these core principles that we can bring into the modern context. So we don't have to talk about it the way people talked about it 3,000 years ago. We can bring it into the modern context. We can talk about it in scientific language, because now a lot of these things are being validated by science. Now that we can measure different electromagnetic things, electricity in the body, the vagus nerve, and how that works. We can measure these things. We have vagal nerve stimulators that we know can treat depression or inflammatory diseases. So now we can start to talk about this and have some validation for what people recognized for thousands of years.
I love that. My career has really been focused on chronic disease. And so the bulk of my work has been supporting people to make healthy lifestyle behavior changes that support their long-term health for people with a chronic disease and or as a preventative measure, right? So in management of or in prevention of. And I wholeheartedly agree, there's a lot better ways that we could be doing that to support health in our country and across the world.
Absolutely. And I feel like we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We may need to talk about it in a little bit of again, modern context, pull in some science, study things, which I'm a very big proponent of studying things, knowing that studies have their limitations too. And studies aren't always designed for whole systems medicine. Like if you're looking at a whole person and all the thousands or hundreds of thousands of biochemical reactions or things that are happening at one moment that influence whatever it is that you're trying to, adjust. That's not what, reductionist science looks at. It looks at some semblance of a control, which of course that in and of itself is a little bit of a weird concept. We control for certain things. And I know we did studies at the Chopra Center on meditation, on, what happens when people would come for our Ayurvedic immersions where they were meditating, doing yoga, eating a certain way. Because in Ayurveda, you're doing more than one thing. It's not about just having some sense that I have a control group and then I have this intervention group and I give the intervention group this one thing and I'm measuring the outcome of this one thing. That's a great model for studying certain things, but not whole systems medicine. But that's evolving. I know people that are researching and really talking about that in the research field of whole systems. How do you research whole systems? And what are the limitations of science in the first place and studies the way we do them? There's the quantitative that we have to measure and look at. I'm a big proponent. But there's the qualitative experiences too of people that is very, very real. And we have to look at that too. And Ayurveda is more of a qualitative science, describing how you feel, describing what you see, describing things. And, they didn't have microscopes and electron microscopes and understand germs or molecules, but there were terms that described exactly what we would call a molecule or exactly what we would call, a microbe. They might just have, again, the words kind of make people, kind of feel weird. But again, if you think about how would you describe bacteria before you could use the word bacteria, or how would you describe, energy? this is what they described. And so, and not only in Ayurveda, a lot of traditional healing systems had all the same concepts, of energy and the mind, body, spirit, and using food as your medicine. And because they all observe the same thing, about health and what true healing is, which honestly, the easy part, and I can say this as a doctor, I mean, it's not easy, don't get me wrong, but the easiest part is the physical body, like let's measure something. Oh, that number's off. Let's increase your thyroid medicine. Oh, you have something there. Let me cut it off, and it's very satisfying, as a physician. Or your blood pressure's high. And I still prescribe medicine. I'm absolutely not anti-medicine at all for anything. Because this is the other thing I love about Ayurveda. It says everything can be used as a medicine. Everything can be used as a medicine in the right context. And everything can be used as a poison when you're using it improperly. That includes water, right? And we know that because I've had patients that drink too much water and their sodium gets too low. So, so I think using all of these basic principles that people have understood for thousands of years is the foundation of how I practice now. I just use a modern context around it, and it works very, very well. And again, I ask everybody in the Chopra world, we talk about these pillars of wellness, and food is, it's food, movement, sleep, which again, now all of those things have data that support how important that is for not just physical health, but mental health. And then emotional regulation, movement, nutrition, sleep, movement, emotions, stress management. So emotional regulation, stress management, which we use meditation as our main tool. And then self-care, the daily practices that you do. And again, as I was saying, the physical things, the physical body is the easiest thing to see, touch, manipulate. Oh, you feel better. Great. For 3 months, you feel better until, the medicine has side effects or stops working because you build up a tolerance or whatever it is. So I do work a lot on that emotional regulation, the stress management, which is very intimately tied to sleep, as we know. So those are the places, I see someone coming into the office and they can't sleep. It's in the thoughts, right? So like, let's talk about what's keeping, yes, there's some physical things. Once you rule those out, then you have to say like, and you take care of sleep hygiene to some degree, dimming the lights, all of those things. Then it's like, okay, what's going on in that mental space that's keeping you from sleeping? Why is your nervous system overactive and not letting you rest deeply? And that you have to talk about stress, you have to talk about emotions, you have to talk about the mind. And those are, pain. We know the emotional state will impact the perception of people's pain and the level of pain they feel. You can't unwind those two things. So, I think we've taken a lot of this Ayurvedic knowledge and packaged it up into these pillars and ways to talk about it that translate in the modern context.
Will you say more about the doshas or the patterns in the body?
Yeah, I love talking about doshas because it was a game changer for me. And it's also been a game changer for patients or anybody learning Ayurveda. But with my patients, sometimes I will introduce a couple of practices for them to do. And then when they come back and they're like, oh, that did help. Then I say, oh, do you want to learn more about that? Because there's this system that describes all of these things. And it can be a game changer for people to understand themselves. Because in Ayurveda, health is created every day or disease is created every day. It's every day, your everyday choices, not just what you eat or what you say, the conversations you're in, how you move your body, but also what you think. What are you, what are your thoughts every day? And any choice you make, people don't realize they have a choice over their thoughts. We get sabotaged by our thoughts. We get attached to these thoughts, right? And this is where mindfulness and present moment awareness and observing thoughts, so you realize I'm not my thoughts. I'm having a thought. It's an experience. Then I can choose to, move my attention away from the thought. So that's why I say choice, because some people feel like, well, I don't have a choice. There are thoughts coming in all the time, and that's true. But we do have a choice of what we attach our attention to, right? So every choice we make, food, movement, what time we go to sleep, what thought we're going to have, how we respond to that conversation or that life event that happened, either it does one of two things. It moves us toward imbalance or disease, or it moves us toward health and balance. That's it, And so when people start learning Ayurveda and what's right for them, because no one size does not fit all. And so people look out there and they're like trying all these diets and they're trying all these things that works for their sister, or their best friend, or the person on the podcast or Instagram, but doesn't work for them. They think there's something wrong with them. But in Ayurveda, there are very particular things that work for each dosha or mind-body type. And if you're doing the opposite of what helps that, for your mind-body type, of course, that's not going to help you. And so the doshas are described. There are three primary doshas, or let's say, again, patterns of these psychophysiology. They're vata, pitta, kapha. Again, they're Sanskrit terms, but what they describe is a pattern. I always tell people, that's how we learn about anything. If you look at plants, if you look at animals, we package them up into patterns. We say mammals. If you say the word mammal, everybody knows there's certain things in common that they have. If you say a succulent, we kind of know what you're talking about because of the patterns that it has. It doesn't need as much water. It has thicker leaves, blah, blah, blah. So that's how I describe this to people. Vata is people who have, and then again, in Ayurveda, we say more air and space qualities, because everything that's described in Ayurveda goes back to space, air, fire, water, earth. Those are the 5 master elements. But when we say space, air, fire, water, earth, we mean those qualities. What does space represent? Expansiveness, openness, lightness, potential, because within a space, there's the potential for anything to happen. Air represents movement. So when we say air, yes, it's like the wind, but it also represents any place we see movement. So within us, it's the movement principle. It's the movement of our thoughts. It's the movement of electricity through all the nerves. It's the movement of food through the digestive tract. That's air. Fire is transformation. When you add fire to something, what happens? It changes it, right? The sun, the heat from the sun changes things. So it's like the biochemical reactions that happen in our body, specifically, or most specifically, cellular metabolism, detoxification, digestion. We're taking food molecules, we're adding fire, and that changes it into something else. Same thing with our thoughts. We take thoughts, we add fire as a metaphor, as a principle, and we can transform our thoughts, right? Water is cohesion. It's bringing things together, bringing our thoughts together to be more cohesive, bringing our lubrication in the body, water. And then earth is ultimately matter. What we can touch, what we can see, what we can interact with, matter. And in the mind, earth is like the ultimate structure of our thoughts, memory, say, where we can carry things over day to day, the stability of the mind. So vata types, what that means, we all have all the elements in us. We have to, because they all perform very specific functions, but we all come in with more of certain elements, more of their qualities than others. So vata types have more air and space. So they're going to be naturally light, thin, their bones are less dense. They have a lot of movement principle, both in their mind, lots and lots and lots of thoughts. We all do, but they have more. And energy in the body can't sit still. The people who have a hard time sitting still, that's their nature. So to ask someone to just sit still. If you're a kapha type, an earth and water type, that's super easy. That's your nature. I'm a kapha. I had no trouble just sitting still in class. That's why all the teachers liked me. But, those little vata kids, they can't sit still. That's like asking a hummingbird to stop moving so fast, right? So vata types like to move. They have lots of thoughts. But what that does is it makes them very creative. It makes them energetic and spontaneous and in balance. So this is where it gets into balance. When you get out of balance, that can turn those very sort of healthful qualities, natural qualities, into something a little more dysfunctional, we can say. So pittas are fire and water. So what does that mean? They have the qualities of fire and water. They have the ability to transform. They have great digestion. They transform food into muscle. So in their body, they're naturally a little bit more muscular, medium build, not the thin, light, natural vata types. Somewhere in the middle, more muscular. Good digestion. They have focus. They're like a laser, like that light. Fire and focused is a laser. So they have that laser wit. They have that laser intelligence. They can focus on a problem and solve it. And they're very goal-oriented. They make natural leaders. They like to be the leader, right? And so that's in balance. They can be very warm. They can be, again, good decision makers. They have good digestion. Out of balance, too fiery, right? We can get into imbalances, but so those are the natural qualities of a pitta. A kapha, that's water and earth. So what does that mean? It means they have more of the qualities. When you look in nature at water and earth mixed together, it's like mud. Nice, soft. So it's soft, it's smooth, it's slow, it's steady, it's cool. That's what kaphas are. If you think of those qualities and those words, you can use those words to describe a kapha type. We're cool and calm. In the mind. We move slowly. So we need a little push sometimes to get going and get a good exercise regimen going. We're a little resistant to, change, but a little heavier in the body. So naturally and in good health, your kapha is always going to weigh more. Strong, steady, like a rock, And so, but again, not enough movement. That mud that moves a little bit can, become too solid, like cement. And then, that again relates to the imbalances. So that's a kapha type. They're usually very laid back. They're like super chill, and also don't like to move a lot. That's not their nature. So this helps people to understand themselves. Oh, I'm a kapha. No wonder it's harder for me to exercise. That's not my nature. And it helps explain other people in your life. You look at your kids or your partners or your co-workers and you're like, oh, that's why they are, how they are. And if you can align yourself with what comes naturally to you, you're going to be healthier and happier in Ayurveda, right? We can bring up the other doshas within us because we all have all of them, but it takes a little more energy. It feels a little less natural to do that, but we can, right? And again, sometimes we're bringing up those different psychophysiological principles or doshas in different contexts. As a parent, you can easily pull up that kapha energy within you to be nurturing and soft and loving and kind and, with your, kids. However, if your pitta's out of balance, you're going to be yelling and screaming and saying, why'd you do that? Nah. Or if your wind is out of balance, you're going to be like super anxious, like, oh my gosh, what if that happens? What if that happens? I can handle this. Oh my gosh, I have so many things, like that worry, anxiety, insomnia. So that's kind of the basics, but it goes so much deeper than that. And in Ayurveda, because you understand people's psychology and physiology, you can actually predict what choices, what activities, what jobs, and anything. You can predict whether that particular thing, based on those qualities, are going to create an imbalance or create balance for any given person. So it's really a beautifully simple process, also extremely sophisticated. Yes, as you mentioned, there are many, many nuances because this is a simplified way of understanding people, but there's more deep information you can get about people, just like we would do labs or whatever. In Ayurveda, there were different ways of getting more information about people. So you can really individualize every person's daily practices, daily routine, to help them, create balance and health and happiness. And so it took a lot of the mystery out of what I used to see in patients. I was like, I don't know what's going on. Now with Ayurveda and having this approach, you can see, oh, well, that's because you're doing a lot of things that are creating movement. You already have a lot of movement in your body. You need to slow down. Or with someone else, I can say, oh, because you're already pretty fiery and you're doing all these fiery things. And so stop that,
Mm-hmm.
And so, and maybe the most important thing is people can learn this about themselves. And so then it's empowering, because the more and more you learn about Ayurveda, the less and less you need your doctor, which is great because you start realizing on a daily basis, oh, if I eat that or drink that, that's not balancing for me. If I do this, this is more balancing for me. And it's a people's medicine, and so I love that too. It's very empowering for people to start understanding themselves. And this isn't just in principle. This is what I've seen for over a decade now, almost 15 years of using Ayurveda in my practice and hearing stories from people that would come to the center and learn about Ayurveda, that just how it transforms their lives.
I love that. I love that it's called the people's medicine, and how someone can learn more about, okay, I tend towards this pattern, towards this dosha, and here are ways to care for myself more deeply so that I can move towards health. Or if I'm making these other choices, then, oh, this is why I don't feel so good, which is awesome.
Right. And it's, again, it's not about being perfect. I'm very far from perfect. But I'll tell you, when I eat late and I eat heavy, because kaphas also have a very sluggish digestion. We just, earth and water is, it's not that fire that pittas can eat a lot. They eat three meals a day, and they eat more than everyone else, and they digest it, and you don't gain weight, because they're active. They like to be, active, unless, again, they're getting out of balance, because any of the doshas can get out of balance, but their nature is that way. And so for me, I know if I eat late and I eat heavy and I eat soft, squishy food, like kaphas are soft and squishy, that's just going to increase the earth and water in my physiology, which for me means I gain weight. I have more allergy symptoms. I have fluid retention, etc. And so doesn't mean I do the perfect thing all the time, but life isn't a mystery anymore. I know exactly why I gained that extra weight, and I know exactly what to do about it. It's not always easy, but it takes the mystery out, and I see people, again, who are like, I just saw someone recently. It was very cute. She was 30 something and a pitta, a fire type. So very active, very busy, lots of things on their plate, lots of projects, lots of like to exercise, goal oriented. I got to do my 10,000 steps. They're the ones who are like, if it's 9,999, they'll stand up and do the one step because they can't sit until that 10,000 is there. So I did a visit on her. This was in my regular practice, and she had a lot of the pitta aggravation sort of symptoms. Labs were all good, nothing major like from on her labs, but symptoms, little heartburn. She was, having some skin rashes. Again, in Ayurveda, they would describe all of the things as pitta imbalance, migraines, kind of feeling irritable. So I said, okay, well, let's talk about your daily routine or weekly routine. When we talked about it, she was overdoing everything. Overworking, over exercising. Pittas hate to hear that, but you can overdo anything. So I said, what's your exercise like? Oh, 4 days a week, I do like whatever it was, Orange Theory or, some intense thing. And then, 2 days a week I do, I kind of take it slow and I do yoga. And then she keeps going and da-da-da-da. And I said, okay, hold on. When you say take it slow and you do yoga, you're doing hot yoga, aren't you? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, that's pitta aggravating, because when they do something, they want to do it to the nth degree. And so I told her, yes, do yoga, but do restorative yoga, do a gentle yoga where you're not heating your body up. And, so it's interesting what pitta's thing is intense and what's not. She thought that was the relaxing day. And then for vatas, they love going here, going there, having new experiences, but that travel and those plane rides and going physically up in the air where there's air and space, they get so constipated, dry, hard stools, their skin gets dry, they can't sleep, they come home and they're depleted, and they see other people doing that, but so that it can't be that, right? But when you understand I'm a vata, and when I increase the air and space with too much movement, too much travel, too much dry salads or dry foods, too light foods, I need warm, cooked, moist foods. You can take trips. You drink warm water on the plane. You eat warm food in the airport. You eat, as soon as you get to the place, you establish a routine. You take your oils with you. Ayurvedic people travel with oils. So you oil your maybe just the bottom of your feet before you go to bed so you can sleep better. You get on a regular routine as soon as you get into that new place. So again, I don't know if you want to call it hacks or what, that seems to be the term these days, but for me, it's more understanding. I understand this is getting my air and space out of balance. So I can do this practice to try to balance that. Ultimately, sometimes it does take just removing that, like cancel that trip. Don't do, so much traveling until you get back to balance, and then do a little less of it and balance with warm, heavy, moist things. So yeah, people, it makes sense to people, because that's how we experience the world. We experience the world qualitatively. We don't experience the world as a molecule or as a photon or as a, velocity. We experience life as movement, as fast, as fast or slow, as hot or cold, as dry or moist. And so when you start using things in that language and looking at everything you choose, is that dry or light? Is that grounding or, like airy? Is that warm or cold? It becomes much more easy to know what to do. And that includes relationships. How do I feel after I have a conversation with this person? How do I, what is my state of balance? If I'm out of balance, how am I going to have a conversation with this person, that goes anywhere? Yeah.
Yeah, it almost reminds me or makes me think of like a owner's manual for the body. Like, here's this body. I'm not really sure. Like, here's some information on how to relate to it and to care for it.
I love that analogy. I'm big on analogies. And so, yeah, I love that. It's like an owner's manual for your body, mind, and, because again, when you're overstimulated, the other thing in Ayurveda, they use the five senses and an appreciation that everything outside of us comes in through these five senses, through our, ears, skin, eyes, tongue, and nose, and has an effect on us. And it has an very dramatic effect on our mind. In Ayurveda, the senses, you can use your senses to balance your mind. So what are you listening to? And that includes what people, news, what music, everything that you're listening to and looking at. What are you smelling? This is why aromatherapy is so powerful. What are you tasting or food? And also touch. Are you hugging people that are loving? Are you giving yourself massage? Do you, has all of the sensory input has to do with the nervous system. And so if you look at how sensory input enters us, it all interacts with the nervous system and goes directly to the thalamus, the part of the brain where, there's memory, mood, the emotional sort of parts of our brain. So that's why you can smell something, a perfume of somebody you knew, your grandma's, cookies baking in the oven, the smell of Indian food reminds you, immediately takes you back because memory is in that, kind of limbic system. But all sensory input goes right to the thalamus, the station, again, in the analogy, and then to be distributed to these other parts of the brain where then we can kind of cognitively process things. But it has the senses and the input into the senses has an immediate effect on our memory, our mood, our state of arousal, even whether we're calm or whether we get activated. And this is where Ayurveda has lots of tools. If your vata is out of balance and you're feeling ungrounded, the heavy smells like sandalwood and like patchouli and like heavy smells are very grounding, right? And they can immediately calm you down. Floral scents, lavender, so many studies on lavender, but a lot of the florals and vanilla, they're heavier scents. For pittas, they're fired up, irritated. You need to cool down the mind. So actually florals are also good for pitta. Lavender, rose, there are other many cooling things, mint, sandalwood, have like cooling qualities, meaning they cool down the mind. Kapha mind, we have a tendency toward feeling heavy and dull and a little down, especially under stress. And so light aromatics, the pungent smells, rosemary, eucalyptus, camphor, some citrusy smells because there's a little fire in them can get us going, right? And wake you up. And again, that state of arousal, it's all controlled through the brain. So in Ayurveda, they use the senses to balance the mind even. And food, and we have all of this knowledge now of how the gut microbiome makes neurotransmitters and how that affects us. So actually there's a whole science of food and how food can affect our mood as well. That's not new. Like people knew that thousands of years ago.
Well, but it's a new science discovery for us. I love it.
yeah, it's fun to
Mhm.
rediscover it in a new way.
It
Yeah.
is. And there's, there's pieces, I think, of what's been learned that inform some of these ancient medical practices as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what I like to do. I like to integrate, because I do see the limitations of, I do see people that are trying to do all the right things. And again, when we understand we live in a world, we don't live in these isolated bubbles. Sometimes you can try to do all the things, but life is pushing you in a certain way, or we're exposed to many, many like overstimulation everywhere you go. There's like music playing. I went to service my car and there's like loud music playing in the thing. You go to the grocery store. I'm like, why? It's just overstimulating our nervous system. But so we have to take that into context. We live in a larger world. And so people do get out of balance. People do get disease. We do have a stressful modern life that has somehow people have decided we need to work all the time. And, people don't live next door to their families anymore like people used to. And there's many, many factors of modern society. So people, yeah, and also people, the food industry and everything, right, isn't necessarily in our best interest of what's easy and available and cheap. So people do have disease and they do get sick. And in those situations, again, medications can really work wonders. And when I prescribe people medication, I also try to tell them, okay, now these are the things you can do to stay in balance, to prevent the potential side effects of this medicine, so that you can use that medicine as a nectar in Ayurveda, we would say, not as a poison. And so you can take out the benefits of the medicine, but not get super out of balance. Now, some meds, again, because they really do push our physiology, shove it in a certain direction, it's good to try to not be them up for a long period of time. And that's where sometimes working on your lifestyle can help people to wean down or wean off of certain meds, or at least not need to keep adding over time, right? And but I also see people who are in the natural world and they already meditate and they have a pretty good lifestyle. Their blood pressure is high. Again, a lot of it is just this constant attack on our nervous system. We're always in a state of hyperarousal. I'm like, just take this blood pressure pill. It's okay. It's not poison. It's going to help you. And, so I kind of play the middle of the road a lot, depending on the person, that I'm talking to.
It makes, we interviewed a researcher who studies genetics and is also a psychiatrist. And he was talking about the research on medications and different, people who have different types of genes. Certain medications work well for them and others don't. And I'm imagining several years down the road, right? Like if we knew if they were Pitta, Vata, or Kapha, and then knew which kinds of medications they responded well to, right? Like it's a beautiful marriage of modern science and these ancient traditions.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's why I love the research that's going on. And there's this kind of, infant field that's just starting of genomics, where people are looking at what are these genetic tendencies. It has to be genetic tendencies. That's why we see these different patterns, like the genes just translate all of those differences into what we actually see, and how things behave, how the molecules behave. But there is some preliminary data on that, where Vatas are more likely to have, like if I see someone who has a lot of these little genetic mutations, whether it's MTHFR or COMT or many of them now, that influence their detoxification pathways, they're almost always, and again, what I didn't mention is people sometimes have a primary dosha, but a lot of people have two that are equal in their physiology. So they're considered bidosha. All that means is there are these two dominant forces or patterns that they have. So either it's their dominant dosha or one of their dominant doshas of Vata. And so what that translates into, what we observe, is they're more sensitive to things. They're the ones that you give them something and they're like, oh, yeah, I didn't, and then I remember training in medicine, people would come in, they were really sensitive to things, and you would think it was like psychosomatic, which it is. I mean, it is and it isn't. It's genetic too, right? Like, so I thought that was interesting. And I definitely have seen those patterns, so if I see a Vata and they have, very bad anxiety, I might prescribe them like a half a dose of what you would normally prescribe to somebody of, say, a medication for anxiety or sleep or whatever it is. We try to do things and avoid them. Sometimes you need them, right? And so I know because they're a vata. And then all of a sudden I started seeing studies where they said, oh, some people do benefit from 10 milligrams instead of 20, but the studies were done with a certain dose, 20 milligrams once a day. And that's what we prescribe because you have anxiety. But if you said, oh, you're a vata and you have anxiety, I'm going to start with 10 milligrams of this medicine because I know you're going to be more sensitive to it. So again, this is where genomics, I think, is amazing. And it's unfortunate that a lot of people I don't know if it has to do with accessibility, the cost of some of these tests, like insurances don't cover a lot of them, but so many medicines, we should be doing these genetic tests before we prescribe them. And we don't. And so at least in standard practices, a lot of integrative practices do that. And certain fields like psychiatry, some cardiologists I know, because a lot of the blood thinners, there are people that don't respond to them. And there are genes that will tell you that. But I still see so many that don't use those tests. And it's too bad. It would help to personalize it, right?
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up accessibility. I was thinking about that when you said the people's medicine and that you came from working in rural places like Alaska and Wisconsin and now working, in a very urban, LA, San Diego area. Yes. So I'm like, how do you bring this information and make it accessible?
So yeah, my hope is that again, studies and science will help make it more accessible because when insurance pays for things, it's obviously more accessible than if you had to, pay out for things. There's data has to be data driven, right? And then you have to show the data and say, look, this actually will help XYZ and get it paid for people. The other thing is just education, and so like I've written lots of articles, as have many people on Chopra.com. That's free. You go on Chopra.com and you go to the articles. And nowadays there are lots of free content. You never know what you're reading. So I would say, go to a trusted source. But you can educate people. And a lot of people, again, I see them in my office. It's covered because I'm their primary care doctor, but I don't have an hour to spend with them. That's the other problem in our regular model. But I can say, hey, go to this website. Take this quiz, read about yourself. We'll talk about it next time you come in. I'll see you in 2 months or 3 months. And, then they're like, oh yeah, I'm a total vata type and I tried these things. And so free educational things is very, that's one way to increase access, but people just need to know it's out there. And then as I've come to work with Chopra and doing the certification programs, I feel very good that our teachers, they learn Ayurvedic lifestyle. There are Ayurvedic practitioners out there, and I just want to make a clear distinction because out of respect for the level of education and training that people get, there are Ayurvedic practitioners that learn herbs and how to make their own herbs and diagnose and treat people from an Ayurvedic perspective. But our certified instructors are in our Ayurvedic lifestyle program are trained on Ayurvedic lifestyle and how to go out and teach Ayurvedic lifestyle to others. And we have now several thousand teachers that are out there. And whenever I connect with them and I hear their stories about how they're sharing that information in their communities, I'm convinced that that's one of the things we need to is kind of, I don't know, people used to call it the white knight thing where like you can train somebody and then, as we say in the Chopra world, like they're the little lights out in the world that are transmitting this knowledge then to everybody else. But things like this, where, you allow people to at least just talk about these things. So there may be people listening who've never heard of Ayurveda, and now they're going to go look it up, and that's exciting. And yeah, so I think those are ways to make it accessible. Unfortunately, in the treatment, there's certain things you can try to treat on your own if they're simple, but it does get quite nuanced and complex, and that's when you need a practitioner. And I know there are people that are lobbying to kind of have those things covered, but our system is such that sometimes it takes a long time and, yeah. So I think it's multifactorial.
I'm imagining, so like what you're saying about the Ayurvedic, it's the lifestyle teachers, right? It sort of equates to a health educator, whereas the practitioner is, providing medicines and more directive, here's what you need to do to help balance, etc.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it. They're like health educators on Ayurvedic health. Yes. And then, of course, we have our coaching program as well. So then people can certify and sit for the health coaching. And then that increases. I was very excited when that happened because that, of course, increases access. Potentially, I'm hoping that's an avenue to get into the medical arena, when health coaching is covered or practices employ a health coach. And every once in a while, one of them might be Ayurvedically trained as well, like one of our Ayurvedic health coaches. So they still need to know all the obviously the medical health from a Western perspective, but we'll have a little holistic approach as well. So these are all the ways I think, in India, people don't get formal education. It's just like kind of part of how you grow up. Like a lot of people learn to cook and they're like, no, you don't put that with that. And you're like, why? And they say, I don't know, you just don't, or when you're sick, you just take this, or here, take this, chew on these fennel seeds. It's good for your digestion. It reduces gas, because people just learn that as they're growing up. And so, but here we have to maybe make it a little more formal because it's not part of our growing up experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's all so fascinating.
But I do think sometimes people get critical of, yes, Ayurveda, there's a very classical, traditional way of doing it and teaching it, but not everybody's cuisine is Indian. And so what we try to teach people is what are the qualities. So pungent foods or sour or sweet or, these 6 tastes in Ayurveda, it doesn't have to be Indian food, right? You can make a meal with all of the things you need to balance all the doshas and the elements by just finding what's traditional or local in your cuisine and just look at the quality. Every cuisine has different types of foods that when you add them together will synergize and give you everything you need. So what we try to do is, as far as accessibility, also make the knowledge accessible in the sense of, I'm constantly saying, look what's in your environment. Look, because we have teachers all over the globe. Look at what's local to your cuisine. When you eat seasonally, there's, what are you finding locally? You don't have to go try to find a, bitter melon that grows in some other part of the world, but there's definitely going to be a food in your environment locally that has those qualities, so that also is a way to make it more accessible.
Very cool. Yeah. And there's so much. Yeah, I love the 5 senses. We could talk all day and learn.
I know, as you can tell, I could talk all day. At Ayurveda, it's a lifelong learning too. I don't claim to be there are Ayurvedic physicians that I go to that are my mentors. And I'm like, what does Ayurveda say about this? And again, there's classical teaching. And then what I try to do, and many people try to do, is make it accessible to the modern world and the Western world, or whatever you want to say, because it can help people, and that's ultimately the goal is we want everybody to feel healthy and happy and live to their full potential. And that's really what Ayurveda is about. It's balance the body, balance the mind, so that then you can move into like your purpose and have meaning in life and not feel stuck in the, and so you have physical, mental, and spiritual well-being.
I have this recollection of that there's this Ayurvedic principle that we're attracted to that which we need least. Do I remember that correctly?
So yeah, in Ayurveda, we balance with opposites, but it's sort of that thing like we learn in like, to make an analogy, like trauma situations, it's what you know, right? So you might think sometimes, why does someone keep going back into that situation where they've been hurt before and they know it? At some level, it feels it's comfort because I know that. I know that. So it's kind of like that with the elements. When you're a Vata, air and space, dry, rough, hard, mobile. So that to some degree feels like that's me, and we're kind of attracted to what we know. As a Kapha, so sometimes Vata people crave dry, crunchy snacks. which is the opposite of what they should be eating. Pittas know fire, they know intensity. So they're drawn to intense things, intense flavors, really spicy food. They want the most intense experience because that's them. That's what they know. Kaphas, earth and water. It's sweet. So we love, the heavy, the mushy, the sweet, the, chocolatey brown. I mean, not everybody does, but like, again, to some degree, being still like this, that's what we know. It's comforting to us, right? It's your nature. But with knowledge, you say, okay, I get it. I understand that this might feel more easy for me, but to balance, I need the opposite. And so I need to do things that are dry and light and moving. And then once you do, there's actually this thing that happens. A lot of people experience it. Once you start feeling balance, then you actually, as we say in Ayurveda, it awakens that intelligence within you. So then you start craving the things that are balancing for you. So sometimes the more out of balance we are, the more we crave what we know. That stability, I know that, I understand that. When you're in balance, and again, we can relate this to other analogies, you see, oh, that's going to get me out of balance. I'm going to choose this. And that's what I start craving, once I'm in balance. So we balance with opposites, and opposites always feel a little unnatural, right? And so I think it was Mark Twain or somebody, at least I learned along the way, it was him that said, if you want to be healthy and happy, do what you don't want to do and don't do what you want to do. And so I think that speaks to that principle, like, I really want to just sit here right now. I'm speaking from my own experience and eat a bowl of ice cream, but I can't, because those are exactly the things that are going to get me out of balance. Yeah.
I love that. I'm thinking about what you were just saying, and people who are in a stressful experience and then craving and going to those old comfortable habits, right, that aren't pushing towards health but are comforting at the time, and how it takes this conscious choice, mindfulness, to do the opposite thing that is bringing more balance into life.
Exactly. And we do teach meditation to everybody who, really does any of our programs, because it really is the doorway to these, when you're stuck in fight or flight and your brain, your amygdala is activated, you can't all of a sudden like, oh, let me think about it. Your cognitive brain is shut off. You're just reacting to everything. So as you meditate, practice mindfulness, all these practices, maybe yoga, become present. There are these pauses that then you start to be able to be aware of your thoughts. Oh, I see that thought. There's just pauses that you didn't know were there. They were there, you just didn't know it, where you can say, oh, how am I feeling? Am I hungry? Am I thirsty? Blah, blah, blah. All the things then, all the little tips we give people, they can actually do them. But if you don't calm down the nervous system, if you don't move the brain activity from fight or flight, stress, amygdala, reactive, to now I'm starting to awaken some of these areas of the brain where I can practice emotional regulation and cognitive processing. None of those tools work, like conscious communication. You can teach people conscious communication, but when they're in fight or flight, they're not thinking about the 4 steps of conscious communication,
Well, and I'm thinking, so I love studying the nervous system, and I'm imagining that a Vata type might be much more a flight response. Pitta, maybe more fight, and then Vata would be more of hypo arousal, right? They might tend to numb and shut off. And so I can 100%. Imagine.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm like, oh, this makes so much sense.
You're absolutely right. See how easy it is? It's so easy. And again, we always tell people, like, these are categories that help us understand, but we all have Vata, Pitta, Kapha, so we can all have any of the expressions of any of those doshas. But you're right in the sense that we have tendencies. That's what these patterns describe, are tendencies. So I always use nature as analogies, because you can use these same Ayurvedic principles in nature. So just because a plant is a succulent doesn't mean with each plant in that category, how much water it needs or how it's going to act when the sun is, in the sun, but in general, you're going to have some idea of the tendencies of their patterns, right? And so you're right. Yeah. Buttas get like, I'm going to run away, and then they're all in there, fight with their words too. And then kaphas are like, I don't want to deal with this. I'm going to go in my cave and withdraw. Yeah. Just numb. Yeah.
I can totally see that.
Yeah.
So I'm aware of our time. As we wrap up, is there anything else that you want our listeners to know or understand today?
I think just be open, be open to more expanded ways of thinking about things. You don't have to give up. That's the thing about Ayurveda. I always tell people, you don't have to give up anything that you know or understand to be true or works for you. But just try to expand, how you think about health, how you think about mind body and the mind body connection, how you think about lifestyle and the choices you're making, how can you expand your toolbox. That's what took me into Ayurveda, is like I had two tools, a medication or a procedure. That's a really small toolbox. I mean, I didn't realize at the time I was also using compassion and things that come kind of naturally to me, like to help people. And now we have the science to show that, just how compassion heals people. I didn't realize that was actually doing something, but I wanted to expand my toolbox. I wanted to be able to have lots of tools so I could look at the person and say, this is the tool you need. And so that's what I would tell people, is think about these new ways of thinking about things as just more tools in your toolbox, to help people or to help yourself, really. I mean, as we know, as healers and therapists or doctors or whoever it is, you have to heal yourself. You have to be in as good of a state of balance as you can before you can actually help other people well, or you'll burn yourself out, or all the things we see, right? So just enjoy it. Look up things about Ayurveda. There's lots of good information. We have Chopra.com. I also love, there's a website, Banyan Botanicals. Banyan is like the banyan tree, botanicals. They sell a lot of herbs, but they're actually an education platform too. That's really great for Ayurvedic information. In a sort of, it organizes around these concepts of Vata, Pitta, Kapha, and so I enjoy their blogs and articles as well. And there's lots of good sites out there, but books, now there's more books than ever, and Ayurvedic cookbooks where the recipes don't all look like Indian food. It can be just like what you eat, but maybe there's just two little factors missing that when you add that, it completely shifts your satiety, your metabolism, your digestion. So have fun, learn about Ayurveda, think about these basic principles of Ayurveda and how they, again, I think that just comes naturally once I learned Ayurveda. Everything I look at now is like qualities, and the doshas, even the climate. It's dry and windy today. It's pretty Vata in the air right now. So I'm going to use my oils a little more and drink a little bit more water and try to keep that balanced, which I don't do that as much when it's rainy and cold. So so have fun, learn more, be happy, be healthy, help others.
Well, thank you, Dr. Patel. It has been lovely to be with you. I really appreciate you sharing your passion and your knowledge and expertise with us today.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. As I said, this is part of it, right? Is increasing accessibility, is just talking about it and having platforms to be able to share this knowledge with people. And so thank you.
Thank you for listening to CASAT Conversations, your resource for exploring behavioral health topics. We hope you found today's conversation timely and meaningful. Please share this podcast with your friends and colleagues. If you want to learn more, visit us at our blog at casatondemand.org.
CASAT Podcast Network. This podcast has been brought to you by the CASAT Podcast Network, located within the Center for the Application of Substance Abuse Technologies, a part of the School of Public Health at the University of Nevada, Reno. For more podcast information and resources, visit casat.org.